Hello, I am Yana Novak. I used to be model for fashion and costume. But now I'm intellectual, reading for you articles of intellect, politic, current affair and concern. Today I will be reading to you the opinion of Slavoj Zizek about the death, life and politic of Nelson Mandela. Rest in peace. Mandela's Social Failure. This might be controversial. By Slavoj Zizek. He's from my country. Well, not from my country because I'm Serbia, but he's Slovenia. But it used to be one country called Yugoslavia under Tito, and then before Milosevic came, this used to be one country. Okay. In the last 2 decades of his life, Mandela was celebrated as a model of how to liberate a country from the colonial yoke, like from egg, without succumbing to the temptation of dictatorial power and anti-capitalist posturing. Posture, like in modeling. In short, Mandela was not Mugabe. South Africa remained a multi-party democracy with free press and a vibrant economy, well integrated into the global market, to immune, like a disease, to hasty socialist experiments. Now, with his death, his stature as a saintly, wise man seems confirmed for eternity, like a god. There are Hollywood films about him. He was impersonated by Morgan Freeman, very sexy black man, who also, by the way, played the role of God in another film, very good. Rock stars and religious leaders, sportsmen and politicians from Bill Clinton to Fidel Castro are all united in his beatification. Is this, however, the whole story? 2 key facts remain obliterated by this celebratory vision. In South Africa, the miserable life of the poor broadly remain in the same as under apartheid. I need to look this up. What is apartheid? Apartheid was a system of racial segregation in South Africa enforced through... Oh, I don't understand. Okay, word means the state of being apart. Okay, so this is when they were apart. Okay. Remains the same under apartheid, and the rise of political and civil right is counterbalanced by the growing insecurity. Well, everyone has insecurity. We are all very vulnerable. Violence and crime, bad. The main change is that the old white ruling class is joined by the new black elite. Very sexy. People remember the old African National Congress, which promised not only the end of apartheid, being apart, black and white, but also more social justice, even a kind of socialism. I don't know how I feel about this. This much more radical ANC, African National Congress, past is gradually obliterated from our memory. Very sad. No wonder that anger is growing among poor black South Africans. Of course, I'd be very angry if I was poor black South African. South Africa, in this respect, is just one version of the recurrent story of the contemporary left. A leader or party is elected with universal enthusiasm, promising a new world, but then sooner or later they stumble upon the key dilemma. Does one dare to touch the capitalist mechanism, or does one decide to play the game? Well, both is okay. If one disturbs the mechanism, one is very swiftly punished by market perturbation, economic chaos, and the rest. This is why it is all too simple to criticize Mandela for abandoning the social perspective after the end of apartheid being separate. Did he really have a choice? Was the move towards socialism a real option? It is easy to ridicule Ayn Rand, but there is a grain of truth in the famous hymn of money from her novel Atlas Shrugged. Until and unless you discover that money is the root of all good, you ask for your own destruction. When money ceases to become the means by which men deal with one another, then men become the tools of other men. Blood, whips, and guns or dollars. Take your choice. There is no other. Did Marx not say something similar in his well-known formula of how in the universe of commodities, relations between people assume the guise of relations among things? Yes, this actually Marx, I know this, commodity fetishism, like sexual fetish with commodity, so it is like sex with things. This Marx, Karl Marx. In the market economy, relations between people can appear as relations of mutual recognized freedom and equality. Domination is no longer directly enacted and visible. What is problematic is Rand's underlying premise that the only choice is between a direct and indirect relation of domination and exploitation, with any alternative dismissed as utopian. However, one should nonetheless bear in mind the moment of truth in Rand's otherwise ridiculously ideological claim. The great lesson of state socialism was effectively that a direct abolishment of private property and market-regulated exchange, lacking concrete form of social regulation of process of production, necessarily resuscitate direct relations of servitude and domination. If we merely abolish market, inclusive of market exploitation, without replacing it with a proper form of the communist organization of production and exchange, domination returns with a vengeance, and with it is direct exploitation. The general rule is that when a revolt begins against an oppressive half-democratic regime, as was the case in the Middle East in 2011, it is easy to mobilize large crowd, like a party, with slogans which cannot but characterize as crowd pleasers. For democracy against corruption, for instance, of course. But then we gradually approach more difficult choices. When our revolt succeeds in its direct goal, we come to realize that what really bothered us, our unfreedom, humiliation, social corruption, a lack of prospect of a decent life, goes on in a new guise. What is guise? I need to look this up. Guise. Guise. An external form, appearance, or manner of presentation. Okay, so like pretend. So it goes to a new external look, form, guise. Guise. The ruling ideology mobilizes here its entire arsenal to prevent us from reaching this radical conclusion. They start to tell us that democratic freedom brings its own responsibility, that it comes at a price, that we are not yet mature if we expect too much from democracy. In this way, they blame us for our failure. In a free society, so we are told, we are all capitalists investing in our lives, deciding to put more into our education than into having fun if we want to succeed. Yes, this is what I am doing. I am becoming educated because I want success as a politician. At a more directly personal level, the United States foreign policy elaborated a detailed strategy of how to exert damage control by way of rechanneling a popular uprising into acceptable parliamentary capitalist constraint, as was done successfully in South Africa after the fall of apartheid regime, in Philippines after the fall of Marcos, in Indonesia after the fall of Suharto, and elsewhere. At this precise conjuncture, radical emancipatory, emancipation is beautiful, politics faces its greatest challenge: how to push things further after the first enthusiastic stage is over, how to make the next step without succumbing. What is succumbing? Not resisting. Okay. So, how to make the next step without not resisting, so stopping resisting, to the catastrophe of the totalitarian temptation. In short, how to move further from Mandela without becoming Mugabe. If we want to remain faithful to Mandela's legacy, we should thus forget about celebratory crocodile tear and focus on the unfulfilled promises his leadership gave rise to. We can safely surmise, what is surmise? Suppose that something is true without having evidence. Okay. We can safely surmise, or suppose that something is true without having evidence, that on account of his doubtless moral and political greatness, he was at the end of his life also a bitter old man, well aware of how his very political triumph and his elevation into universal hero was the mask of bitter defeat. Oh, this is very sad. His universal glory is also a sign that he didn't really disturb the global order of power. Very interesting this, because what Zizek is saying is that if you disturb global power, then you might not be success. This is like me. I disturb the global power of the Playboy Mansion, and I'm not success to be Playboy. So I am going to try to be success to be politics. Thank you very much. I'm Yana Novak, correspondent for politics and intellectual thoughts.